If we think back a few years, there was a time when we were worried about Ebola, with the swine or bird flu, but we probably never imagined a global pandemic that would kill millions of people. And you might have prepared for an earthquake, a flood, or a tornado, or even a hurricane, but maybe one didn't strike, and so you kind of relax. We were wrong to think that brighter days are just around the corner. It does tend to quiet down, but our futures look very different than they may be from our vantage point today. In this video, I want to talk about why you should be preparing and deploying a deeper prepping strategy to endure the challenges that we will face in the immediate future. If you're not prepping with a methodical purpose and strategy, as I'll define in this video, you risk not being ready when it's you, equipped with only your preps, stand against the world. If you're new to this channel, my name is Chris, and on this channel we discuss emergency preparedness, aka prepping. Prepping, it allows you to steer your future closer to what you can envision. As preppers, we see what is coming and we want to prepare. Believe it or not, we're still living in a time of great abundance. Walk down any cereal aisle in any store and take a moment to marvel at your choices. I have personally lived in third world nations, and it never ceases to blow my mind when I return and I walk into big box stores like Costco when there's nothing but abundance. Your ancestors, they probably only had one choice every day for most of their lives. When you spend more time thinking through the options of what you'll have for dinner than you actually do eating dinner, you're in a time of abundance. It's very different from how previous generations had it. Still, I do admit that I see challenges and hardships for many in the future. And do I get excited to see that the future will probably have troubles? Not in the least bit, quite the contrary. I grew up in a time of abundance and prosperity, but the world as we knew it is drawing to an end, and we're heading into a time in which we're going to face a lot of challenges. Challenges, they're at our doorstep, which will require a new way of thinking. Here's what I would advise you to do to rise to tomorrow's challenges, just like your ancestors did. We need to start out by adopting strategies now for a better future. What do I mean by that? What are some examples? Start by buying two. When you go to the store, look at what you can put in your shopping cart. Find that one shelf-stable product with the furthest expiration date and buy two of them. Even though you may not need canned soup, meat, vegetables, when you go to the store for just a loaf of bread and some milk, go through the aisle and buy a can. The next point is redefine your supply lines. As we've seen from the recent avian flu outbreak worldwide, now is a great time to raise your own hens. If your HOA won't allow you or you're not ready to take that step, now would be a great time to build a connection with a local provider. Maybe you could create a subscription plan with them for a dozen or two eggs each week with your local provider. And I'll release a video soon on my channel about raising chickens, and I'll refer you though back to a video that I did a few years back. Honestly, chickens are very easy to raise. I tend to really mess up with gardening and other things, but chickens are kind of a set them up, feed them, give them water, come and check on them, take their eggs every now and then. And that's really the extent of my experience. They've been pretty easy to raise. Let me ask you this, have you tried to dehydrate eggs? Now might be the time to learn that skill, which is translatable to many other foods in your food storage. I just released a video a couple of days ago. It's a starter's guide for food dehydration. And I would refer you back to that video if you're not sure where to start. Have you considered joining a co-op or partnering to buy a whole hog or a cow? I have a lot of friends that have been doing that recently, and individually packaged, neatly cut meats, they're only going to go up in price in the coming months. But buying rougher cuts in bulk, they're going to be more of the norm, I think, going forward. But you have to know how to cut and process these meats yourself. And you'll need to know how to cook them. Whatever you're buying, can you buy it in bulk? It's these individually wrapped, single-use things that are the first to go when the supply chain inevitably fails. Next question, are you growing anything? You have to take control of your supplies in even the most minor ways. My wife, God bless her, has been cleaning out our garden this last week, preparing to start planting in the next week. If it was up to me to get around to the garden, I would keep procrastinating and we'd be halfway through the summer and probably haven't planted a seed. She does an amazing job with that. And I'm very fortunate that, incidentally, my parents are also flying in this week. My dad is an amazing gardener, both my parents are, And I haven't got to see my parents in over 3 years as they were concerned with flying out, given their health and their age with everything with COVID. But I'm excited to get that started up this year, and I'll hopefully be releasing some videos showing you the progress as we at least get things going. If you look at what's happening in the world today, and you're eating out every night, and you haven't stored any food and water, and you aren't growing and preserving any food, there will inevitably come a time when, I hate to say this, you may be a statistic and not a survivor. And I know that sounds harsh, but more and more the future will favor the self-reliant and prepared. There are many strategies that you can employ, and those that we just mentioned are just a few. You really have to approach your future with a plan to bring the chaos of an uncertain future between the guide rails of your planning. And most unfortunately will not learn from the pandemic that we just went through, the lockdowns, the wars that we're going through, the grid failures, or even the natural disasters that strike their area year after year after year. And here's a reality. The government, they're not going to be there to bail you out each time. And we know this. As preppers, we all have come to a point, or at least most of us, where we realize it's going to be up to us to take care of ourselves if something goes sideways. Now, the next point is to build based on the premise of 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, then scale up to a year and beyond. The minimum of food and water and emergency supplies that the government typically recommends is 3 days, and that's a great starting point. And you can get there today if you do it right now. However, the reality is that the 2021 Texas power crisis lasted for a couple of weeks. Mississippi, their power was out after Katrina for 12 days. Your next step is 3 weeks' ability to totally survive on your own, locked down in your home with no help on the horizon. And once you can see that 3 weeks from a holistic 360-degree angle view, you really start to build out to that 3 months, then a year or more. And I say all this because this is a premise that I built and that I recommend people start out with. Start out with those 3 days. They're achievable, they're doable. Once you get that momentum going, then you can go up to that 3-week time frame. And from there, I think you begin to lay the foundations to move up to 3 months. And once you get to a 3 months point, you're in a position where moving up to a year is just scaling some issues, primarily food. I'll be relaunching my Preppers course at the beginning of May. And in the course, we cover this principle, how to prepare for 3 days, 3 weeks, and then 3 months. And if you're interested in getting updates about the course, I will post a link in the description section below for the newsletter where you can sign up, and we'll be alerting you when that course comes out. Now, this journey of preparedness is similar in endurance to running a marathon. Even if the opportunity to prepare is narrowing, if you've started to buy two and you've begun to redefine your supply chains and you've employed other strategies, you are on your way. When disaster strikes, you're going to understand the new road that you're on, and you'll be able to adapt, and you'll be able to control ultimately your destiny. The next point I want to bring up, and I can't emphasize this enough, and this is something that I've implemented in my life lately, and it's made a significant difference, is you need to unplug. We are constantly being bombarded with problems in our world. And I feel for our kids and the constant bombardment of issues that they have to face. There was a time when we were not so plugged into it all. Do you remember that? I do. I remember the first time I got on the internet back in college in the mid-90s. And life prior to that, I do miss it to a degree. And there was a time when you got your news by willfully turning in at a particular time, buying a newspaper, or taking a trip to the library. There was a time when we realized problems were complex with many causes and not just solely attributable to a single person or party. Those days, they're long gone. And the constant exposure to every world problem in your face in real time and demanding your attention has two effects on us. The first is stress and anxiety. It's easy to feel that we don't have enough time to prepare. And the reality is that all your preps combined, whether they will fill a house or a small closet, they may not be enough when the time comes that you're going to actually need them. So I would encourage you to stop stressing about them. Methodically build them, but don't stress. Strategically plan them for the broadest range of possibilities. Then when you do need them, you'll hopefully have enough to get by. Stress and anxiety won't help you achieve your end goal of being prepared for the broadest range of possibilities. So if the news isn't alerting you to the threats, but it's just making you mad and stressed, it's probably time to unplug and focus on your work. Now, the second thing is that it can serve as a motivator for us. Here, it can actually be healthy. If you see the Deutsche Bank, for example, warning of the American recession, if you see the conflict in Ukraine potentially escalating, if you feel the inflation, or even think that, yeah, maybe the climate is changing. I'm seeing things that we've never seen before, patterns in my area, and it's impacting me. And you're not overly stressed about some of these things. You can use that energy to motivate you to build a better future for yourself. I personally am. And there's some major decisions that I'm in the process of making over the next few months based on what I see happening, based on what I'm getting from the news, based on what I'm seeing other people do, making major decisions. And it's alerting me to what I believe are some significant events coming in our not so distant future. And I'll share more on the channel shortly about some of the changes I'm making, what I would consider almost life-changing decisions. But I'm basing these things on these inevitable problems that I see coming. And look, these problems, they're not going to go away. They will change and they will wax and wane over time, but they will assuredly escalate and intensify over the long arc of time. If you spend all of your energy assigning blame, or you spend all of your energy raging against anyone who doesn't believe the same things as you do, you are wasting good energy you could be using to prepare for a better future than what you're currently facing. Now, when it comes to your family, you don't need to stress them out or scare them into your way of thinking. Just explain to them that you're not willing to suffer after an earthquake strikes, or if the power goes out for a week or more, or if you fall on hard times. These things are all very realistic scenarios. I would encourage you to approach your preps with them from the point of confidence in your decision and not entirely as a reactionary response to the chaos that we're all seeing in the world. Look, you can explain what you saw on the latest pundit news channel, but I can guarantee you that many are trying to tune that nonsense out. They'll tune you out as well in the process. And we all have friends who may have already unplugged or have always been a little unplugged from it all. Still, they prep or otherwise do it for themselves out of a desire to live a better life, not necessarily out of fear of the world. So I always try to answer this question. Is the window closing to prepare? We've talked about this several times on the channel before. Proper prepping is a methodical and continual thing. If you're doing it correctly, you're never too late. You're simply adapting and rolling to the next thing you need to do. In the next prep, you need to shore up. And from that sense, you're never really too late. I would say, yes, the window is closing for those that still fail to prep at all. Your ability to get the resources you need at still affordable prices, it may be significantly hampered by failing supply chains and soaring prices. And if you're not preparing at all, if you have no methodical strategy to get prepared, you're simply one disaster away from failure. And look, you don't have to be. Start with the strategy I mentioned earlier, carefully apply it every day, and start building the guide rails to steer an uncertain but assuredly tumultuous future. I try to do these videos once a week, and I hope they serve as a source of encouragement and also as an opportunity to spur you on in your preparedness journey. While I've tried to be careful lately, not personally getting caught up in the world's problems, I do realize what's happening, and I have concerns about what I see unfolding over the next several years. Again, am I concerned? Yeah, very much so. A lot of people think because I have a calm demeanor on this channel that I'm not concerned about how things are playing out in the world. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I have to be careful not to let my mind wander too much. And I'm trying to be careful to not let that concern spill over onto my channel. And I hope you remain calm as well and follow these practical steps that we've outlined here. As always, stay safe out there.